About Artist Americas was is where we met the Sayoc family. So we were real young, right? 5 plus 5, so about 8 or 9, right? And we're going over there to train, and this is part of the Artist Americas, but they have a house in Queens on Parsons Boulevard. That's just right. It's a few miles from our house, not even a mile probably. And we're going over there as young kids, and we're training there. Remember Pamanatuan and his brother Mike were black belts in Taekwondo already, and judo judo practitioners. Their father Tatangbo, who we call Titabo, he was already, I think, a black belt in karate, and had his kids do Taekwondo. So they were already accomplished martial artists, like really good martial artists, like Olympic Taekwondo, like very gifted physically. Pamanatuan and his brother. So we're learning some Taekwondo there too. So it's pretty cool. It's like forms, like Kibon One, and things that kids learn for discipline, like how to stay still, how to move in unison with other kids, like stuff that kids need because they're they're running around all over the place. We're also learning basic, and we're learning from at the house. We're learning from Pamanatuan. I think he's 15 at the time. 14, 15. He's 9 years older than I am. So, so we're learning our basic stuff there, and we get introduced to our first sparring matches. It's pretty cool. We wear some, I think it was like kendo gear back then. They didn't have any. Either it was a kendo helmets or like hockey helmets, and the kids would use wiffle ball bats. So it was pretty good. Like you train to be aggressive, not to be scared to get hit and stuff like that. You're kids, so you get nervous before it starts, and once everything starts swinging, you get into it. It's pretty cool. It's fun. Every time you go there, it's like a Filipino party. There's a lot of food. People are cooking. All the food is out in trays, just like a regular Filipino party. And
our first Bruce Lee movies.
Yeah. So it was just stuff for kids. So
yeah.
I guess while the adults were training, I don't know where they were. They might have been training, I guess, with Master Leo somewhere. Maybe they weren't even there, or maybe they're in the backyard.
They were in the back by the vineyard, by
the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we were
up front. And there was mats out there. We would tumble. We would roll. We would do stuff with sticks. It was like physical stuff for us to learn. And then we would. I guess it's like babysitting it or something. So I don't know if. He would have the big screens with the projectors, the 8mm projectors, and he'd play Bruce Lee movies and stuff they do kind of now for martial arts schools. It's kind of like a daycare, but you learn martial arts, learn how to punch and kick, and
we learned enough so that we could do demos, because the whole class, whenever we did, Artist America was one of the missions was to spread the Filipino martial arts to first the Filipinos,
right,
and then like out to the general public. But what we would do demos at the Filipino
fairs in Flushing Meadow Park. Yeah, they were trying to show Filipinos and Americans about this Filipino martial art and its culture, because it's very what we call tribal now is really just family. Tribe. It's like a extended family. Even today, when we have events like Sayoc Sama Sama and Call the Mountain. It's just a big hangout, it's serious when it comes to training, but it was like that there. Like everybody's hanging out, and then it's like, we're eating, and then we rest a little. It's like, all right, get up and train, but everybody gets serious. I started getting introduced to like doing demos. So I did this thing like Little Dragon, man. I hated it, man. I hated that shit because they made me do thing, and I had to like lock, and I had to kick and punch. But they would look for me every time there was a Filipino festival. And every time there was a Filipino festival, like you usually think about the food and all the pancit and all the fried rice and longanisa and that. But man, I remember saying my dad go, "Hey, we're going to the Filipino festival." I'm like, "Oh shit, I know they're gonna make me do this demo." So man, I wanted to eat the food, but I would hide under the table because I know like they're there. They see you hear the drums starting, the demos are starting. You know that everybody's doing these demos. They used to use these live belay. They did these live belay demos with like Pamanatuan, my dad, and Master Leo. They were like they're doing drills and stuff. I mean, we were still doing those demos in the '90s for college shows and stuff. But then I knew that, I mean, I would hide, and then Pamanaton would always hide. Come on, Carly, get up. And I was like, oh, I was nervous, I hated it. But then when it started, man, I got used to it. Little did I know, like, man, 35 years later, man, that's what I would be doing for a living. So it's pretty crazy when you look back on that. But that was Arnis Americas to us. It was like that little bit of training, and meeting Pamanaton, his dad, Tita Bo, Tita Hetty's mom. She would take care of us. Pamanaton and his family was doing for us. They were like facilitating that. When we weren't there, we were training with my dad, and it was the same material. It was like, same stuff. You do some triangle footwork, and you do some drills, and stuff like that. Like the stuff for kids. It was a good, it's nice. It's a nice little curriculum because it's not really dangerous. It's not stressful like fighting. So kids could do it, and even in the '90s when I had my own students, and my brothers had students out in the West Coast. They would still do those drills because they were good coordination things. But when the fights were going on, when guys were being trained to fight, there was another curriculum that ran. So it was, which is what Atienza is now. Pamanaton and his brother, so we're the young kids, right? And the parents would talk, and you would hear them, like the way your kids hear parents now. And I remember they were always fighting. They were really combative kids, like on the street, always fighting. Like they're always saying that Mike Sayoc would get into fights, because we all went to the same progression schools, 117, 217. I think they went to Hillcrest, and I went to Jamaica High School, and so you would hear it. You would hear about these brothers that were before that, and it was cool because they were brothers. But man, every time Mike would fight, he would knock guys out. Man, it was crazy. They were like 13, 14 at the time. They would get in, it was the 70s and the 80s and stuff, and you got your little racist thing going on, and they would just bang in there, put their fist in that problem, put their foot in that problem. They were just knocking guys out, and Mike would always get caught and get expelled. I remember that, but Pamanaton wasn't doing that. Pamanaton also had a crew of guys. Always, there was always a crew. You always have to have a crew. No matter how good you are by yourself, there's a whole bunch of guys who can fuck you up, right? So he always rolled with the crew, and he was always the best fighter in the crew, and he trained those guys. And it was the same formula you hear, like, there's a guy, he fights a guy and beats the guy up, and then the guy hangs out with him. This is a bad neighborhood, right? It's a rough neighborhood, so guys are looking for people, and then they hear about that, and that's how the crews grow. But they're 14, 15 at the time, and man, we're hearing it. Oh, he got into trouble again. Oh, he knocked this guy out again. Oh, so we're 5 years old, right? We're not teenagers yet. We're not in the teens, and we're like, man, we're gonna be like those guys one day, because you can't say you're gonna be like men, because you have, as a kid, you can't even fathom that perspective. But you're like, we're just 10 years away from that, 4 years away from that, whatever, and it was cool because you hear it, the Sayoc brothers, they're banging guys out all the time, so.
You even heard about it in junior high school. By the time I went to junior high school, one guy asked, "Are you Filipino?" Mike Sayoc, like, I was like, yeah. How the fuck? I remember telling you that?
Yeah. And they were like ahead of you.
Yeah.
They were already in high school already, right?
Right. They were gone a few years.
Yeah. By the time I got to that same school, they didn't know anymore.
Yeah.
But his exploits were like legendary.
Yeah.
Locking dudes in closets, fighting a lot of guys, beating guys down.
Using his feet.
Yeah, using his feet. Guys who could jump in him, and he's beating 9, 10 guys down with a baseball bat. Like you hear it. You don't know the intricacies of the encounter. Well, you do later, because then Pamanaton tells us about the intricacies of the count. And there's always a lesson about like something, But that's what we're hearing, and and then we become. All right, so then we're teenagers, and now we have our own stuff going on. So it's cool. Now we're in that, I don't know if that's how it is in like warrior cultures or whatever. I never like using that word warrior for ourselves, but like in cultures where people are fighting, you're always trying to strive to that. By the time you get to that age, you're doing that kind of thing. And you know, it's the mid '80s now, and like crack is full on, man. It's you know, you see the crackheads walking around, and drug dealers are there. My brother kept getting into trouble, and my younger brother, so he would have to move schools because there were gangs in the schools. He wouldn't get into a fight there, beat some leader up or something like that, and you know, and then you know the gang wants to kill him, and then the police come, and then they have to transfer him to another school. So he's in the new school, and he's going to get jumped again. And I remember we would run over there. You know, that's what we get our protocol. You got to be able to like sprint a quarter mile or half a mile, and then fight 3 guys. You know, that's like one of our standards back then. Like one person fights 3 guys. So if there's 3 of us, we could fight 10. You know, that kind of thing. And so there's 4 of us, because I have a cousin with me also. And yeah, it's great. And we get there, and we think it's going to be like 5 or 6 guys. You know, be even, maybe 10, because there's 4 of us. You know, we already knew in Mass Attack, if you bang a dude hard, like everybody shakes for a little bit, and you know, we already had the training of finding the guy who's got the gun, because everybody had a gun, so you could identify who's. You know, we already had that observation training from my dad, like who's got the gun, are they right or left-handed, where they, you know, you're looking for like the sag in the pants for pistols, and where their knives are. You know, we had all that training, so we were good at identifying that already. And we get there, there's like 20 guys over there, and we're like, oh shit, because you know, it's still 20 guys, and if they all fight now, in reality 20 people don't fight, maybe a few of them fight, people watch, you know, there's no like, at that age there's no 20 people who work together, you know, and they keep pistols in a bag.
Yeah, like a sports bag.
Yeah, like you know, their school bags, they would keep their pistols in bags, so you identify them, you know, like you know, like you're yelling, everybody's arguing for a second, you know, and then you know, the guy, his bag comes off, and then you move on that guy, and then you know, yeah. So stuff like that's happening. We're getting our own thing going on. Like our stories are starting to sound like my dad's stories, and you know, like we're hearing those little things. You know, 14, 15. So it's kind of cool. It's good. You know, now, you know, you got these kids who got. They learn this Filipino martial art that's super combative, and they're in a bad neighborhood, and because of this skill set, we never have to join a gang. Like we knew guys down the block, they had to join the gangs. You know, they had to put in work, they had to shoot people, they had to do all that stuff, and they get caught up, and most of them go to jail. I mean, not jail, but you know, the youth camps or whatever, or the juvenile facilities or whatever. But we never had to do that. Like, this is the whole thing about like the beginning of like the family and tribe. Like it keeps you away from the issues, you know, because once you get into that, once you start seeing that violence, then the emotions come, and then the drinking starts, and then the drugs. Like you have to start, you know, controlling like feelings you have, you know. So we didn't have to do that. You know, a lot of the fights are, you know, they're like empty hand fights, you know. So they're pretty good. Tropos, we're using like that's the tropo time. Like my dad made his own little tropo thing, and we were running those. Devastating weapons, man, devastating. You know, we're seeing how they work. You know, it was good because you know, now all of a sudden it feels like you got this superpower. And remember, at 15, who has any skill? You know what I mean? Like they usually just bring like 20 guys and they jump on you. But who has skill? Like, it's kind of cool. And then you'd have your friends who come in, and then you fight in the backyards. You know, they had friends. Your friend knew a friend that, oh, you're that motherfucker. And then you go and either you stick fight or you fist fight. You know, sometimes you would padded stick fight. And anytime someone argued about a point, you're like, well, you gotta stop fucking arguing, right? Take the helmets off and get the dull machetes out and figure it out, like. Or back then there was no training sword, so we just dull out machetes and just fit. Like if you're arguing over who won a point, go back and do it again. Just make it for real. You're arguing because it's fake. You know, like if you got to argue over the point, you know, that's bullshit. Like go do it for real and see who wins. You know, put a helmet on so nobody dies. You know, that kind of thing.